Hi everybody and welcome to SVG Europe's Sport Production Leaders Briefing Part 2. This is the second in our panel of, which is in 3 sections for you. Today we're talking about producers and host broadcasters. I'm Heather McLean, editor at SVG Europe, and I'm joined here today with my co-chair, Ken Kirschbaumer, SVG editorial director.
Good to see you from across the pond. So.
Power of Zoom. Today our fantastic panel, which is a cast of thousands, will be discussing technology they've seen this autumn, as well as the technical challenges that they've faced over the last 6 months during lockdown and bringing sport to your screens, and what they need technically to move forward into 2021. We will also be hearing from VizRT with a MotoGP case study midway through our discussion. Please use the Q&A tool on the bottom of your screens to post questions for our panel during, as we go along. If we can slot those questions in with the questions that we're asking them, we will. Otherwise, we'll ask the best ones at the end. And use the chat button to have a discussion with the group and to talk to your friends. Okay, so before we begin our discussion, please welcome our title sponsor, Panasonic's Head of New Business and Market Development, Guillaume Correa, who's going to give us a little introduction. Hi, Guillaume.
Hey, Guillaume.
So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this new webinar in the Leaders Briefing series. The main purpose of these webinars, as you know, is for you to discuss current challenges and opportunities, and Panasonic is definitely focused on supporting you by consistently delivering new technologies and innovations to the market. So yesterday, I talked briefly about the massive disruption that all of us are currently facing in our businesses. And I also talked a bit about how Panasonic approaches innovation and why we think that more than ever, innovation in technology continues to rewrite the possibilities for business. We can see technology trends like IP transition and remote protection are now boosted by social distancing, and companies require to adapt quickly. So for us, the question is how to innovate and optimize in the face of rapidly changing conditions and customer needs. I started talking yesterday about some of the concrete innovations that we are bringing to the market to help our customers overcome specific problems or adapt quicker to new constraints. Talked, for example, about our new PTZ cameras and the adoption of protocols such as NDI and SRT to facilitate remote protection. And also about the support of the 3D protocol, which contributed greatly to make AR and VR affordable and accessible for much more customers. Today, I will present our 8K ROI system and do a quick introduction of Kairos, our new IP platform. And I will also talk about it in more in-depth tomorrow during the next session. So the 8K region of interest system, or 8K ROI as we call it, is able to provide up to 5 different virtual camera shots from a single camera position by cropping into its 8K canvas. The camera and the crops are controlled by one single operator using a software interface. This makes it a fully automatized and next generation production tool for local and remote production. The system is also scalable using 1 or more 8K box cameras and PTZ cameras, allowing to rethink entirely the production process for the coverage of live events and to save a lot on costs. The 8K ROI system is based on a box camera equipped with a newly developed 35mm full-frame sensor. HDR and BT2020 are supported for more realistic and dynamic pictures. And the camera head uses standard EF lenses, which are compact, easy to use, and widely available everywhere. As mentioned, the 4 HD crops can be dynamically and independently managed from one single operator using a user-friendly GUI. Each frame can be controlled independently. This is where the framing control software comes into play. One of the main features is that the master or main frame can be set by the operator, and then the subframes are linked to it and follow the action automatically. Some fixed frame position can also be set to simulate fixed camera shots. One single operator can provide up to 5 different shots, and the production can be done locally or remotely. As a result, more sports events can be shot at the same time by improving operational efficiency. The system is also quite easy to install and to dismantle, so setup time and costs is reduced, and shipping costs are also reduced. 8K system and PTZ cameras can be combined to get more angles for tight budgets. Here is an example using one 8K camera box and 3 PTZ cameras linked by IP. The main frame, which follows the action, is set on the 8K system, and the 3 PTZs are automatically following the action. This setup is particularly efficient for indoor sports like basketball or handball. This 8K system is now available on the market. Let's move on now to Kairos, our new generation IT IP video processing platform that enables unprecedented productivity for broadcast studios and live events and shows, again, great innovation. Kairos breaks free of the boundaries that come with traditional hardware, allowing production to become even more flexible, dynamic, and powerful. Time is limited today, so let me give you a quick overview and I will provide a more detailed presentation tomorrow on Kairos. Let's say that regarding Kairos, the traditional approach is to send baseband signals to specialized hardware products, basically processing these signals using dedicated hardware boards. Current approach on the market is to make the transition from baseband to IP signals. However, dedicated hardware is usually still required, which is costly and brings many limitations. So with Kairos, Panasonic goes IP and at the same time uses IT components and software processing, opening the way to a new level of performance for our customers. And here is Kairos in a nutshell. It's based on a unique, groundbreaking software development and relies purely on CPU and GPU in terms of processing power. Offers true uncompressed video processing and uncompressed 4K inputs, uses precision time protocol or PTP, gives full support of baseband and IP signals all at the same time, gives access to a very user-friendly software interface, and last but not least, Kairos offers a super low one-frame processing latency and allows to manage freely an unlimited number of video layers in real time. So more about Kairos tomorrow, and this wraps up my presentation for today. Thank you for your attention and see you tomorrow for the next episode.
Thank you very much, Julien. And can I now ask my panel to magically make themselves visible, please? So today we have 6 people for you. They are Roland Donagher, World Rugby's Head of Technology, Broadcast and Innovation, Emili Planas, Mediapro Chief Technology Officer, David Tippett, Sunset+Vine's Head of Broadcast, Michael Cole, PGA European Tour and Ryder Cup Europe Chief Technology Officer, Tom Giles, IMG's Head of Engineering, Studios and Live Galleries, and Julien Bertin, HBS's Head of Infront Productions France. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Hi, and now I'm going to hand over to Ken.
Yeah, I can't have my camera's not turning on for some reason. So you have to have something when you go live, right?
There we go.
All right, there we go. We are. See everybody. You know, that Panasonic presentation was really interesting because I think, you know, I wish we had IBC to see these technologies in person because those are the, you know, there have been so much cool stuff introduced this year at NEB also. So I do want to kind of talk a little bit about if there's anything you guys have seen the last few weeks because there has been a lot of news coming out there, obviously new workflows. Julien, wanted to start with you at HBS. You know, what have you been paying attention to the last couple of weeks as far as just what you're seeing in the marketplace and just in the industry in general?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the question. It's a very hard pick because I think we all have seen a lot of things, a lot of trends, a lot of innovations amongst different sports with different technologies. I try maybe to pick out 3 and they're mine, but I'm sure others have different ones. I was quite impressed with the work that has been done in the Bundesliga with the audio treatment, replacing the non-present fans. I thought that was a really good idea. And then obviously taken on by UEFA for the Champions League finals in Lisbon. I thought that was quite impressive because it actually made you forget that there was no one in the stands and suddenly you started really focusing on what was happening on the screen and on the field. So I thought that was really clever and was a really good and clever replacement of no fans. The second thing is maybe the possibility to completely remote produce a football match, which BT has done in the UK. I thought that was really impressive. Not just remote in one location, but remote across plenty of locations across plenty of private homes. I thought that was a terrific achievement. And last but not least, what I saw just recently was the US Open, the tennis in New York, and what broadcasters came up with as ideas for, let's say, virtual insertions of interviews and having basically players coming on set while the presenter was maybe in London, in Germany, or wherever. And I thought that was a very good replacement that almost looked like an innovation. So I think that's maybe the 3 elements I picked out.
Gotcha. So Emili, from the Mediapro perspective, because obviously you guys would have had probably a booth at IBC talking some new technologies anyway, but what have you been seeing? Anything interesting as far as obviously the at-home productions or the remote productions, the AI, use of AI, the 8K camera we just saw? What kind of things are you seeing?
Really, it's not a easy question because we have a lot of new technologies applied during the COVID period. Basically, in operations, there are a lot of people that accepted for the first time that remote production is a good way to produce with the same kind of possibilities than locally. This obviously will increase the capability to work with the integrators and the brands that provides equipment with this mentality. And we will see much more remote production ways to work in the future. I think the last presentation of Panasonic demonstrates a little bit what are the technologies we will have in a few days or in a few months. That's the region of interest using large sensors and 8K and more resolution in cameras, and the increasing of the capability of process these signals will be a very easy and cheap way to produce much more sports to offer to the audience other kind of competitions that today are expensive to produce. We, as you know, we in La Liga, we produced the fake audio for the fans in 21 matches per match day at the final of the last season, adding the virtual fans to increase the interest or to keep the interest or the way to watch football as usual. That's probably the best effort with us during the COVID period to add these features in a record of in a time record for La Liga and for the fans of La Liga.
Was it a challenge? One quick follow-up on the Liga. I mean, was it a challenge with the quick turnaround from one season to the next to really kind of do new innovations from a host's perspective?
Really, well, the fought with us during the COVID lockdown to be ready for the restart was very, very hard. We increased the number of equipments, people working in the virtual layers of the stands and other layers we have for La Liga. What with us during this short period of summer, a part of 1 or 2 weeks maximum of holidays for some people that was exhausted at the end of the season, is adding more layers and more graphics, more virtual graphics or augmented reality graphics into the production. We will see the next season. We are watching this the first day of La Liga. We discovered new graphics with new information, not only in Barça and Real Madrid matches as the last season. We can produce up to 21 matches per match day with augmented reality and new graphics layers. This will increase the quality, the quantity and the quality of the information we deliver in augmented reality.
Great. So Michael, we know you guys are back in action, right? The PGA Tour here in the US just kind of finished up. What's kind of been anything catching your eye as far as new things that you might be able to use for the upcoming season? And I guess the Ryder Cup is next year, so we'll look forward to that here in the States, hopefully. But
yeah, we've had a busy old time, actually. We took a pause in our season, but we came right back with the UK swing. And it's been quite incredible. When we look at technologies, I mean, there are some great technologies out there at the moment, and our real challenge right now is to kind of look at how we address necessity rather than the nice to haves. Things that have caught my eye. I know we did some initial investigation with iCandy Lab, augmented reality, and how fans can enjoy live games with interactive AR. People like Sparks, I know, are very big in the US, and looking at that enhancement of the broadcast stream, and then people like iLuga from Europe, around multilingual video content for AI techniques in auto production. Some fabulous stuff out there, but I must say, from our perspective, we've had to take a little pause on how we bring some of this innovation into our game, because it is absolutely down to necessity. And we can't get away from any conversation right now about talking about COVID, and COVID has been a real kind of challenge for us. But we're uber pleased with the progress we've made. UK swing has been fabulous. We're into Europe now, and we're about to come back to the UK again very shortly. And technology has had this incredible platform in which to really help accelerate and bring the sport back. And I'm sure we'll touch on some of that later on in the session as well.
Sure, thanks.
Great, cool. And then to Tom, I mean, everyone's talking about, different innovations they've had to do, and BT Sport working in a completely decentralized manner was mentioned. How have you guys found the challenge of dissecting galleries and control rooms and spreading everything out during lockdown? What's been the hardest thing to work out technically?
Well, I mean, good question. I think we've all been faced with that challenge. From our standpoint, the traditional model of 20 people inside a control room all delivering one project has just had to be completely rethunk. We've had to turn meeting rooms into EVS places and graphics areas, and it's been a real challenge. But I think the other sort of area of interest has been when we've had like bubbles of productions that have, due to COVID or travel restrictions, suddenly commentators haven't been able to get there, or the kind of the traditional model. So some of the we did the snooker event, the World Snookers, and we had to put the presentation came from Stockley Park and all the match content, and that whole architecture and really thinking about the way that you deliver those things has been a real challenge, mostly around comms. I mean, specifically with the World Snooker, trying to get a telestrator to work from Stockley Park on a world feed being generated from Sheffield was interesting, but it worked. But yeah, those are, I think, mostly, that the kind of trying to remote commentary seems to be the biggest challenge, I think.
Cool. And then what about you, David, over at Sunset+Vine? How have you guys made that work?
Well, I mean, I guess we've been part of that BT process, and sort of part of the overall bigger team responsible for helping deliver that coverage for BT. So I think learned a lot in that. I think we also sort of learned quite a lot in the middle of breakdown about kind of how we might deploy some sort of smaller types of technology, like we've become very familiar with the vMix, for example, and I think a lot of people out there have, or similar kind of devices, and sort of exploring what you can do with a vMix, and how far you can sort of push that sort of system, and not just in a broadcast sense, as well as a sort of an online OTT kind of sense as well. So we did some really interesting stuff with Zwift, the cycling platform, and created some shows with we did one with Team Ineos, all their riders racing against one another on Zwift. We had presenters in one country. We had commentators in different places throughout the UK, and we had cameras on each of the riders as well, which they'd set up themselves, and we were bringing in through Zoom. So it was sort of a chain of Zoom, vMix, and ultimately putting out what was quite an entertaining show that went live on YouTube on the Zwift platform, and then highlights for broadcast as well. So we've sort of we've had some fun trying to kind of play with some of that technology and see what we can do with it.
Cool. And what about you, Ronan? Have you been involved in anything around this area?
Yeah, unfortunately not, because we've had no event, as Tippett will be there to tell you, because thankfully Sunset+Vine do the 7th for us. Just going back to the remote, and it's more the distributed type stuff. We have been doing some of it for the last 2 seasons really, and that's around commentary on digital. So we've been using a startup called Spalk, who've aided us to put, you know, foreign language commentary on the feeds, and we also used it during Rugby World Cup with Julien and IGBS. That's really as far as we've got with it. Somebody mentioned earlier about people having to buy in, and how this time has shown that remote can be done, and that's very true. I think there's still a large group of people out there that for whatever reason, you know, they like going on site, or they like the travel, or they don't have faith in technology, they haven't bought into it yet. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge over the next probably 12 months.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Emili, I want to bring you in because I think one of the things we've heard here in the States, and I'm sure it's over there as well, you know, everyone's been working remotely, different levels of connectivity, right? Some people working from one home, and obviously now the kids are back at school and they're online learning here in the US, and you're seeing neighborhoods, the bandwidth is going down, so people can't do their jobs because all of a sudden their kids are not only playing Fortnite at night, but also doing schooling and web, you know, Zooms all day. What's the connectivity challenge that you're seeing as far as the future of this remote production workflow?
I try to divide in 3 different groups the connectivity. The most common level is to have internet connection, usually more than 100 megabits for downloading, and 10% of this for uploading. Using internet, we have different approach or different technologies to be used. One is the vMix, controlling the vMix remotely, or other devices like vMix, or the capability to remote a device that we have in an OB van or in a studio, or part of this, with a low latency video return or feed. We have a lot of limitations with this, but this kind of technology opens the door to produce remotely, or to produce delocalized with people over the world. No? The second kind of connectivity is when we have private network with a limited bandwidth, up to 1 gigabit more or less, where we don't have the capability to send the video signals and compress it, and we need to compress. Depending on the number of signals, we can compress more or less, but we need to adapt, or we need to have the capability to adapt the compression to the best quality and the less latency as possible with the bandwidth we have, speaking for remote production. And the third group is when we have a lot of bandwidth, more than or up to 100 gigabit per second in network. And we have the capability to produce remotely, working in 2020 directly with uncompressed signals, or compressing with JPEG XS or TICO or something like that, that offers the opportunity to work as local with devices we have hundreds of kilometers away. The challenge for me is, as a service provider or as a producer, is to have the tools that we can use in the 3 network bandwidth. Using the traditional encoders and decoders, this is something not possible, because major part of them are designed in hardware, and it's very difficult to manage different encoders or different encoding profiles depending on the day we are working with more or less bandwidth. But using software platforms, probably we will see in the future, or we have some equipment that are capable to work in all the bandwidth available with the same kind of equipment. We can use the same cameras remotely using 5G connections or using 10 gigabits connections with the best quality as possible in each case. That's probably the challenge, is how to integrate all of these devices with different networks and with different control rooms. Probably some control rooms will be in the cloud or will be software-based in a monolithic installations, or with traditional control rooms with EVSs and video mixers and so on. The challenge is how to manage in the next 2 years the compatibility of all these devices between them.
Gotcha. Yeah, for the group, I mean, has anybody else had any war stories as far as connectivity? Are you comfortable with open internet? Does that terrify you? I mean, 2 years ago, people said you can't use the open internet for anything. So what's any war stories out there? Successes? How are you dealing with these issues of connectivity?
I think it varies. It varies from sport to sport. You know, we work in an overlay situation, so we probably have more commonality with the likes of F1 and the world of tennis, and probably run in the world of rugby, where we don't necessarily own the assets, and you know, we don't get the luxury all the time of having fibre delivered to those courses. So we have to work in very conventional means, backhaul over satellite. So it's going to take our world a little while, I think, before, you know, we have the luxury of having fiber permanently deployed to you know, the majority of venues in which we operate, and only then really will remote production becomes a viability.
Gotcha.
And then just briefly, before we go on to the VizRT case study, are there any other technological areas that you guys have found challenging over the last 6 months? You know, and how have you overcome those? Who wants to go? Volunteer.
Have a go. I think the one area, just through social distance, is just things like the, you know, the audio supervisor not needing the guaranteed people to come into the room. So for us, Lavo, Mix Kitchen and things like that have been quite interesting, just to sort of try and decentralize some of those things. They've been important parts of the sort of new normal, if that's the right word.
Liz, anything else?
And I think, well, and with these sort of, you know, the lightweight productions that we do, and where we are relying on not traditional broadcast equipment and domestic internet, ultimately, I think one of the other areas we sort of spent a little bit of time sort of trying to figure out was the comms and how you do that. How do you talk to a presenter who's presenting on vMix and you know, and the guests, and how do you handle that, the communications? And there's lots of different ways you can do it, but you know, it's a sort of an area often it gets overlooked, doesn't it, until the last minute, and you're about to go on air and you realize you can't actually talk to your main talent, because, you know, so it's that sort of thing. I mean, we've started using the that Unity app on the iPhone quite a lot to you know, and I don't think, you know, a few months ago we'd have ever considered how much we'd be relying on things like that to kind of be the glue that's hold the production together.
I think the commonality here is, we all know that technology can underpin a lot of this remote production and some of the, you know, some of the challenges we've had around the COVID. But probably the biggest challenge is one of process. You know, we all work in very traditional and very established models, and some of our respective teams and colleagues have worked this way for 10, 20, 30 years. So I think the biggest challenge is actually breaking that process, breaking that establishment, and actually the workflow process is one that really requires, you know, the thinking and actually how the process is going to now differ in this kind of remote working way of operation.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Okay, so on that note, we're going to have a little break here. I'd like to ask my panelists to go dark on us for a while we go off to speak to VizRT's Thomas Nelson, Head of Sports Europe, plus his special guest, Sergi, Sendra, Dorna Sports Senior Director, Media Area, Technical Content and Production. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Hope you can hear me. Yes, so I'm Thomas Nelson from VizRT Sports. I am hopefully here with Sergi and Sendra, as you mentioned. He is currently in Italy at a race circuit, but he's promised to try and make himself available for a few minutes. So we had quite a strange period of IVT sports, same as many of you of the production companies and broadcasters and so on in the past few months. But it's also generated a lot of new innovation from that, which has been amazing. So I'll try and share my screen here, and hopefully this works. And what we kind of saw early on, that we had a lot of conversations with many of our partners and broadcasters who are sort of looking at how they're going to work with the new production environments, and how they're going to be able to produce things with less people on site, most likely, more remote production, delocalized production, as Emili Planas was talking about, and how this would work with, for example, our tools. So luckily we had already quite a foundation built already around things like our tracking technology. So what really we saw was a winner here was the use of taking full use of image-based tracking. So for a live event, you would quite often have some sort of mechanical tracking to insert either virtual graphics or augmented graphics. But that requires, of course, extra equipment on site, people potentially, and so on, which was hard in this period. So with the image-based solution here, it allows you to do this remotely, more easily, without so much, or actually any technology on site, which eases the production a lot. So we worked a lot with kind of scenarios that some of our partners were looking at. There were some crazy ideas in the beginning to how you were supposed to fill in the gaps of not having any fans. So this was a bit before this all actual virtual fans came on board. But then we worked a lot with Mediapro and La Liga, for example, to be able to put in either augmented graphics or virtual fans, as they did with great success. So combined with the virtual audio that they also inserted, I think this gave it a very nice viewer experience. We also did some work with the likes of Coppa Italia, who had a slightly different version of inserting their fans or their messages, which you can see here from the Coppa Italia. And similar over in the US, from the NBA, who wanted to create some sort of home feeling for the fans, so that it could somehow resemble what it would be like at their home arena. So they wanted to put in their own normal virtual logos and sponsors and so on to make that happen. And then last but not least, Dorna and MotoGP, who also had a stop in their production for a few months, wanted to be able to connect to their fans, which we will now have a conversation with our dear friend at Dorna. So Sergi, I'm hoping that you are.
Hello, how are you?
There you
Hello.
go. Perfect.
From Milano in Italy.
Perfect. So this is Sergi Sendra from Dorna, and what is Dorna's role at MotoGP? Just as a sort of introduction to yourself and what you do.
Well, my role is I am senior director working at Dorna since '92, so it's quite a bunch of years. And the goal is to prepare and to take care of all the elements that are part of the live production, which I am now in the International Program Fit studio, because we are still in the circuit preparing things for this next weekend, which is the second race in a row here in Italy. And my goal is to concentrate technical content and artistic elements to make the best product for our fans that, unfortunately, in Italy we have some fans, but at this moment we are having a very strange season with no people in the stands.
Great. And how was those first months for you when you were suddenly there was a break in the races, there was no races going on? What did you guys do?
Yes, well, we have to say that we were in Qatar trying to do our first race, which already we could not have the top MotoGP class there, only the Moto2 and Moto3. And right after this race, we had to go home and be in lockdown for nearly 2-3 months. So this opened a complete different scenario for us, because there's people in Barcelona, people in Madrid, people in Italy, people in England. So we had to figure out how to providing content to our fans wherever they were, and using the new technologies from home and from our servers. So we started thinking, okay, let's start using any kind of footage or any kind of content that our riders, our heroes, our teams, the promoters, and any manufacturers, anybody could start generating this. So it was a complete different redesign of the work that we normally do on the circuits, because the circuit at that time disappeared. So the most important thing was that we discovered that being at home, lockdown, with new tools like, for instance, Adobe Premiere Teams project, we edited a complete series from different homes, the Petronas series, based on the success of Fabio Quartararo, our French rider, that now it's second in the championship. So that was done from different places. And then the other challenge was how we can keep racing with no circuit. We use our Sony PlayStation and Milestone product, which is races that you play in the video game, using our homes to connect with digital tools. These digital tools were connected to the riders at home. It was so funny, but at the same time so complicated, because 9 riders in Portugal, in Japan, with a schedule. And we wanted to show that was live. So we had to connect all of that. And that took a time, but I have to say that it was a complete success. And thank you to this new product. We did 5 races in different weeks, connecting our sponsors, connecting the circuit. So we generated more than 3,000 pieces of digital content, and we obtained 10 million interaction from people at home, and 12 million live connections. So let's say social media, made a step forward with these products, and also our digital department, that it's not young, because we started very early in the 90s when we did the first ever live, let's say, on-demand races that you could have on internet. So we are picking up these fruits, but also we discover all this work that could be done for home.
So, which is great. So how did you then plan for sort of getting back to your real races without any virtual fans or spectators on site?
Well, the thing is that at this moment, we knew we could start racing with a lot of restrictions. So I guess 50% of our time, with practically no time, no free time, it was dedicated to design how we could come back and travel again. And then one of the tools that we discovered that could be interesting for us to send messages to all fans using our production tools was VSRT Arena. That was a way to connect with fans. We work in big, in massive, about 1 million square meters space in front of us with different camera positions. So we thought, okay, let's start doing this, because it will be the only way that we generate visual effects on our arenas and on our camera fields to send messages. Again, that was done in a record amount of time. Not obviously, we started watching La Liga and what you were mentioning before, and that gave us also an idea that, okay, we could use this tool, the VSRT Arena, to make things. And now I have to say that in each Grand Prix, we are starting introducing data in it, and we are starting introducing new ideas, because it's a very exciting tool to not only to connect to the fans and to send them messages, but also to enhance our production. Huh?
Perfect. Well, I know you're a busy man. I know you're in the middle of between two races, so I'll let you go back to directing and look forward to seeing what you're going to produce next. So thank you for that, Sergi. And then I will hand back to Heather and the rest of the discussion panel.
Sergi and Thomas, thanks so much for that. Viz, appreciate all the support as always. You know, fascinating technologies. Obviously, here in the US, we have the NFL kicking off, and they're using some virtual fan technologies to put cheering fans, individual avatars, if you will, in the stands. So it's really fascinating to see how people at the networks and at the leagues are trying to kind of fill this gap. Michael, I want to kind of talk to you about the challenge as far as, you know, are you finding, do the golf fans, are they going to want anything differently as far as their viewing experience? I mean, obviously I'm a huge golf fan, watch way too much of it. And, you know, the data that you guys are using now to push through the swing data, you know, the height, the ball speed, it's just, you know, it's crazy. So is there anything you guys are looking at as far as the next gen fan experience, if you will?
I think we're still exploring, is the honest answer, Ken. I mean, our world is changing rapidly, and certainly in the last 2 to 3 years, you know, we've been through a massive transformation. We've been collecting data since '72. We used to collect scoring on a tournament by tournament level. Then we kind of went round by round, and then we late '90s, in fact, we went hole by hole, and now we're collecting 15 data points on every player on every stroke in real time. Now, you know, the big challenge is actually what we do with that data, and I think the opportunity is really how we can create real immersive content to enable the armchair fan, you know, get as good an insight into the sport as maybe the, you know, the on-course spectator that clearly doesn't exist right now. So I think, you know, we're just at the tip of the iceberg really in terms of what we can do with the sport. You know, there are certainly a lot of opportunity ahead of us and a lot of excitement in terms of what we can do, because that real challenge is how you get the data off the course. We can now do that, you know, which leaves us with the nice, you know, challenge to have, which is actually what we do with that data. So yeah, some very, very interesting times ahead of us.
Sure, sure. Anybody else, as far as the fan experience, is it changing? Is it evolving what they want, given that they can't go to the stadiums?
Yeah, I agree with Michael about the challenge to integrate all the data we can give from a match or from the complete league or the different competitions. Now we can keep a lot of information. The problem is how to manage this information to offer this information to the fans in a beautiful way and in a comprehensive way. We cannot offer this information in raw. We need to adapt this information just the most important moment to offer this, and the graphics we need to design needs to represent this data as best as possible. This is one of the challenges we have, is try to offer more information, more interesting information at the correct moment, but with something beautiful and easy to understand.
Sure.
These graphics, well, the good news is we have the capability to put these graphics in augmented reality. This opens the possibility to explain much better what we need to offer to the fans. The most simple thing is that the hot area where a player is moving without augmented reality is something not very much interesting. But if you put this on the field, it's much easier to understand. And all the information we can acquire from a match in live and without latency, we need to analyze this information, and if possible, we need to compare with other matches, other players, and create these new informations for the fans. The other challenge is not all the sports needs the same graphics and the same explanations. What is in MotoGP, that's fantastic, all the graphics we can see, is nothing compared with football, because we don't have the same kind of information. And if we compare football with basketball, it's totally different, and other sports are not really comparable with this kind of graphics. This is really very difficult for Bertin and other companies of graphics to integrate something that helps all the sports producers.
Sure, sure. Well, Ronan, I want to kind of bring you in because obviously at the Rugby World Cup last year, which seems like a million years ago, by the way, you know, you did the 360 stuff with Canon, which was like off the charts. So you guys are innovating there. But where do you see AI and, you know, AR kind of fitting into this whole equation? Because the goal is to make all this data and stuff easier to publish, create. How are you kind of keeping an eye on that? All that stuff?
Yeah, it's very true, Ken. A lot of data, and very much to Michael's point, you know, we collect a lot of data, and we were always wondering what do we need to do next, what do we need to do, and we were coming up with ideas and listening to suppliers. So what we've done recently is gone back to the fans, and we've launched a fan panel where we've asked the fans what do they actually want to see. So while we have all the data, we want to make sure we're investing the money in the right areas to give them back what they want. The machine learning and AI works great for some sports, there's no doubt, and we've had many suppliers come to us and show us fantastic products to do, you know, automatic highlights and clips and stuff like that. And it works great in football and basketball and other sports. Rugby is a very, very, very difficult sport to do anything automated in. And Tippett will tell you that, definitely, and Julien as well, from both the 7s and the 15s. The 7s in particular, as anyone who's watched it knows how quick and how fast it goes. So we need to train the technology more, and the companies will tell you that it needs to be trained and it needs to be fed. And, you know, artificial intelligence, by its very meaning, it needs to be intelligent. So the more of a leg up we can give it, and what I mean by that is if we can, you know, put more sensors on players, if we can give them more correct data, the systems that they don't have to come up with themselves, it'll just help the product that it can give us. And yeah, back into graphics, but again, if you just look at 7s versus 15s, we don't get a whole lot of time to show that type of stuff. So for us, digital is probably a better avenue when it comes to the game of 7s for augmented reality, or even, you know, the app. 15s, yes, we used AR Rugby World Cup. Probably wasn't used as much as we probably would have liked. It just didn't lend itself to it in the end. We had great aspirations for it. What we did get off looked great, and something we'll probably review again. But look, AI and machine learning, it's here to stay. The big boys are spending big money on it. So for rugby, maybe not, but for other sports, definitely.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, carrying on with the AR thing. So I love AR. It's really, really interesting. I've just done a really interesting interview with BT Sport about what they're doing with 5G and augmented reality. Is there anything, any of the rest of you guys doing anything in that kind of area to keep your fans happy going forward?
I think the challenge here is that, and I know this is a sort of a technically led kind of forum, but I think sometimes, you know, the sort of we forget actually what is the story we're trying to tell. And I've worked in golf for years, and I've, you know, done a lot of 7s now with Ronan and his team, and you know, both sports capture a lot of data, so much data, so the challenge has got to be what is the story you're trying to tell. It's not necessarily how you display it. That comes second, and I think that's sort of the really difficult thing, because we got the technology to do all of this stuff, to capture it and to display it and represent it in AR, but as a producer, where we're struggling to catch up is well, what are we trying to say with it all? You know, what are we trying to say? And sometimes it's really difficult to get an answer to that question, and you're sort of just trying to kind of use the technology for the sake of it, which for me is a sort of a not always the way forward. And I still look at, you know, I know, you know, I was having a quick look at the participants. Mark Sheffield's in the audience, or was, you know, and what he and his team did on America's Cup still sets the standard for how you combine storytelling, data, and AR in an amazing way. And when they first brought in Liveline to America's Cup coverage, it sort of revolutionized the whole sport. And we're always sort of looking for those sorts of moments that do that. And but I think we just need to get the producers a bit more on board on what we're trying to do with it all, and what stories we're trying to tell. Because sometimes
sorry, Tippett, there as well from a governing body point of view, and I know the vast majority of people are broadcasters, so bear with me while I say this. You're part of the story of telling the story. You're not all of the story, and you're not telling all the story. And we need to marry up both broadcast, live, highlights, and digital together using whatever technology, and to Michael's point, not for the sake of just using technology, but whatever is relevant and is needed in those different mediums to tell the story, to bring the fan along, to keep them interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, Emily.
I'm sorry, I totally agree with this as a whole, how to tell a story based on artificial intelligence and machine learning is one of the challenges we have now. We, as everybody knows, we can clip a lot of clips during a match automated. We can classify these clips for technical reasons, calls, corners, yellow cards, etc. This is something really not very complex to do. But where is our key is, and where we are doing efforts, is trying to convert this information in something we can apply when we decide to send a complete video of 2 minutes following some rules of interest for the fans. It's not the same interest depending on the part of the world you are sending this video. It's not the same depending on if you are sending this to referees or to I don't know, fans or young people that likes other kind of videos. How to automate this delivery is the challenge, because the most important thing is not to send the goal very quickly or to send the highlights as usual, is send the specific highlights for each kind of user. Mm-hmm. And this is where the artificial intelligence needs to work on.
Sorry, Ken.
I was going to say, do you all think in general, obviously a lot of everyone's taken a big financial hit the last 6-7 months, and as host broadcasters, your goal is to talk to your rights holders and give them what they want. And I think a lot of people forget that they actually fund it, right? So you're not going to do something just to do it. Ideally you have a rights holder who says, yeah, well, we're willing to pay for that. What's your sense on, are things going to tighten up as far as what you think they're going to ask from you? And do you think like automated production is going to help, free up financial resources to continue to innovate on things on the bells and the whistles? What's the tension there in the marketplace right now, Julien?
Maybe, and again, I think it's just following up on what Dave said and the storytelling. I think automated production is great, and I think it's definitely one alley forward, but it's not just the main alley forward. I think automated production works really well where the sports is repetitive, where you know exactly what's happening when. Let's say it's a skiing race or it's racing on the track, etc. I think all of those team sports where you have human beings that improvise something in movement, etc. You can't automate it, what goes to the player's brain in a millisecond, because suddenly he or she's going to change her mind. And I think as good as automated production is, I think it can really help, let's say, second, third tier sport or even amateur sport to get on the screen or to get basically to be seen somewhere on, be it on traditional TV or on the internet. And I think for that, it's amazing. And it does something amazing because it visualizes the sport and it puts it to air. And you can probably calibrate your cameras in a way that you don't take too many risks. You will always have the action and shot, etc. But I think there's all those team sports, be it football, be it rugby, at some point, the human element is so important. I mean, you can't replace a cameraman who knows how the sport goes who knows eventually that he needs to pan back to this player who was offside or who got a little knock on the knee, who's messy, and suddenly the director wants to show that person because that's the story. You need to tell that story at that moment. And if that production is automated, you lose that story, you lose the empathy, and you lose the connection to the viewer. And I think that's super important. Is that I don't know how far artificial intelligence will go, but I think it'll take a long time to replace the human experience and the human sensitivity to how a sport goes and how a player might decide to do something. If he's injured, I need to go there. If Messi, I don't know, gets very agitated, that the director wants to show that because this becomes the story at that moment. And I think that's crucial. And I think we shouldn't forget that because this is the way the story are told and this is how the drama is done. So I think there's two alleys for me. There's the automated productions, and artificial intelligence can help a lot of second tier sports and eventually sports where there's a lot of repetition. But I believe that for those sports where there's a lot of improvisation, a lot of human decisions on the last second, you need a human team behind it to be able to adapt and to tell the story. So the viewer at home goes, wow, yeah, oh, look at Messi, or look at this guy, etc. That's how I see it.
I was talking to Jamie Reynolds with ESPN about the US Open production, right? And I think to your point, he also mentioned robotic cameras, because I said, well, robotic cameras, are those a good replacement? He said, the problem with a robotic camera is if you're shooting a tennis player, like if there's a handheld camera guy or woman can really dial the focus and, tell a story by just panning from the ball from the sneakers to the ball to the face. And with robotics, he said, you just can't do that because you don't have the vision. The camera person can't see outside of what they're looking for. So I think it's going to be really...
One, you don't have the vision, and two, how can you second guess? How is the robotic camera going to look at Azarenka about to serve, be focused on her, and then defocus and focus, what's her name? The winner of the US Open, sorry. Osaka, being ready for return. I think no camera or no artificial intelligence will be able to make that decision, while the cameraman, either by himself or through the director, will say, give me a pull focus. And I think that's crucial because in that moment in time, we know that's the story. She's about to serve, it's match point against her, she can't lose that point, etc. And I think that adds to the drama.
Yeah, but in my opinion, the artificial intelligence and the automated production needs to be focused on second level production sports, where today is not possible because of economical reasons to produce with a minimum of quality and to stream this to a limited number of fans. But with automated production, we can do it. And it's easy. The quality is acceptable. Obviously, it's not a Premier League or a La Liga match production, of course, because there is much more than technology in when we explain a match, because we are doing a film in live every production, focusing on what is interesting and what is more or less polemic in each match. But if we keep working on automated production for this kind of sports, we can promote new sports, we can discover new fans, and probably this second level sports, I'm sorry for the definition, I don't know how to explain this kind of sport, because I like this kind of sport than football is my question. But anyway, the possibility to increase the number of fans of these sports, increase the capability of the possibility to do more business with this kind of sports, when these sports will increase the number of fans up to the level of we can go with a traditional production or with a non-automated production.
Very, very, very much to that point though, if you take an example like South Africa schools rugby, that may not be broadcast at all now. If we started exactly with that model, automatic production, machine learning, robotic cameras, it's not cheap, okay, but it's possibly cheaper than flying a crew out. And as more people watch it, you get more advertising, you get more income, and then eventually you go up to the level of doing it professionally.
So you need some investment first there. But it sounds to me like, you know, from a lot of the stuff you guys have said about AR, for instance, and machine learning, you kind of need manufacturers to walk up to you with a package and say, here you go, this is what it works, this is how it works, and this is how it will actually, you can just plug it in and play it and make it work and produce something interesting. So to all of you, I'd like to hear from all of you on this one. On behalf of the suppliers, the vendors, the manufacturers in the audience, if someone out there has something that they think would be of use to you or something they want to try and flog you, how should they approach you? You know, what should they come to you with, and what do they need to remember in order to pitch an idea that you're actually going to pay attention to? Let's start with Michael.
Okay, thanks, Heather. First off the block. I get less thinking time than everyone else. That's fine. I mean, you know, my response to this, and I'm sure amongst peers in the industry, I get inundated with new pitches and great ideas. And as I started off today by saying, there are some incredible capabilities and technologies out there. We are in unprecedented times, and for me, talking about remote learning, you know, it isn't about the cost, because actually I don't think the cost savings are there. I think it's actually about other issues of necessity around less people at the venue and you know, getting the same quality product but in a far more efficient way. You know, the straight answer to the question is think through the proposition. Yes, I'm interested in great technologies, but I'm also interested in the commercial model. It has to have a compelling ROI. If you spoke to me 6 months ago, 12 months ago, I'll be saying, well, ROI, 18 months, 2 years, I'll think about it. Right now, ROI within 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And then David?
Well, for me, I suppose, you know, if you're pitching to me or Sunset+Vine, you're pitching to producers, I suppose. Keep that in mind. So we're, you know, we're interested in the end use of it, what it looks like when it hits the screen or the device or whatever it might be. You know, don't you know, I'm not actually that worried about how clever the technology is. I'm worried about how clever the end result is. And I think sometimes it's forgotten that you know, that's what we're interested in. So just keep that in mind. Focus on what is the end result, and why would a viewer or a user care, and what are they getting from it?
Oh, yeah. And what about you, Ronan?
Look, I rob a quote from a famous Welsh referee. This is not football. Rugby doesn't have the same money as soccer and football, unfortunately, you know. So very much like Michael, we want to know the return on investment very soon, you know. And I'd say we're not, personally, not a producer. We're a governing body. We have other stakeholders that rely on broadcast as well. So we're siting commissioners, or medical, player welfare. You know, we've all these other people. So maybe there's technology out there that suits one of those stakeholders that isn't purely for broadcast. So think it out, very much what Michael said, think it out fully. What's it going to give us back, both return on investment and, you know, who is it going to help, who's it going to assist, and is it really a wow factor for whatever it's trying to replace?
Cool. And has that ROI shortened for you since COVID?
Yeah, down to zero nearly, seeing as we've no rugby, but yeah, unfortunately it has, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I'm different to most of them here from an engineering standpoint. We're just looking for a solution that works end to end. So, you know, I don't want to look at this great thing and suddenly need 6 different synchronizers over here or a bit of technology over here. It needs to have a complete thing that actually works without us having to go and then buy a load of other things downstream of it. They're the big challenges that often happen when we get these sort of pitches. But we're always interested in stuff.
Cool. And Julien?
I'm just going to repeat a little bit what's been said just before. I think what Dave mentioned is obviously, and it's exactly my point of view, is what is the end result? What is it going to do to help the broadcast fan, the viewer at home, to experience a better live event? Is it just a gimmick, which is nice to have, but after a while it gets worn out? So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is whoever's pitching needs to understand what that company is doing, be it Sunset+Vine, HBS, IMG, etc., to understand what sports we're doing, how we're doing those sports, how we're broadcasting them, what is it, what is our aim we're not traditional broadcasters. Most of us, we're doing this as world feed producers. And with this in mind, we have specific goals that are there to cater for all the broadcasters. And whoever comes and pitches something needs to understand what we're doing, what our final product is. So they understand if what they pitch makes sense for us. And last but not least, just about the commercial thing is also, is it viable? And I think Ronan mentioned a good point, and I have a very concrete example. Is obviously Canon and the Rugby World Cup was huge, and it was really nice and amazing. It was the new kid on the block, 360 replays, virtual insertion, etc. But this only happened because Canon kept founded. If we're speaking about almost hundreds of millions. I mean, to put up all those cameras and the technology, it's huge, and no one really can afford that in this day and age. So yes, it's great to have, but if we, HBS or Infront Productions, will come to any event, to an Ice Hockey World Championship and say, we're going to recreate that, it's going to cost you 55 million euros, they might say, great, but laugh at us. So I think this is maybe resuming what's been said just before.
Yeah. Okay, and finally to Emili on this one.
Yeah, for me the word is interoperability. As we work in IP, and we think to keep working in IP remotely, locally, or wherever IP can be the technology to work, is the interoperability. As Tom told us, we need to be sure that all the equipment we will use in one extreme is compatible and works fine with the other side of the production, and have the capability to mix different providers depending on the needs with the same networks and the same technologies, and have the capability to produce better than we are producing today locally, using remote production workflows or delocalized workflows, because this will remain for the next years, and we need to be sure that we can work with these compatible devices in both sides of the work.
Sure, yeah. And before I go to Ken with the last main question from us, what other technology problems do you guys still need to solve to go forward into the new normal over the next 6 months, or even over the next 18 months? Let's start with David.
Well, I'll probably just go back to Michael's point from earlier, and I think that the problems aren't necessarily technological. It's breaking those old conventions and adopting and embracing the new workflows, so that so ultimately the technology isn't a hindrance, because I think a lot of producers and directors are kind of still at that stage where it's kind of they're hankering for the good old days, and need to kind of understand that they're probably not going to come back. Not anytime soon, and from a producer's perspective, I think because producers traditionally are the ones that actually are the ones that caused create technological challenges, and not and that's what we want to get back to. I think is where we're trying to overcome production set challenges as opposed to COVID-related challenges, but I think part of that is just being able to kind of deal with the new technology better.
Yeah. Anyone else wanna?
Heather, I was just going to say the cloud. The cloud has allowed people, one-man bands and little garden sheds, to come up with fantastic technologies and use supercomputers for the switch on, they pay for like a utility and switch it off again. They don't have to invest in massive hardware. So suddenly you have all these little enterprises popping up left, right, and center. Personally, again, to you, Michael mentioned it, people knocking on the door all the time. No issue with that. And I suppose to the previous point, if people want information about understanding our business, by all means reach out. But there's great businesses popping up. One-man bands, little small 2-3 people teams. You don't have to be the big massive producers anymore of hardware and software. So everybody's come up with fantastic ideas. I think the problem is there's so many of them. There's nearly another industry there for someone to be in the middle to try and understand everything that's gone off and, you know, and resell it nearly.
Great. Over to you, Ken.
Yes, well, you know, Heather, should we take this question from John Lennon? Should we throw it into the mix since we have an audience question? So what does the panel think about the viewer second screen control technology, like specific cameras, angle selection, highlight control over the internet rather than just, you know, relying on the red button approach? Are you seeing, I know this has been, I think you've been talking about this for 25 years, the selecting stuff. I mean, is there any more interest in that second screen control of choosing highlights, camera angles?
This is one of the reasons we started the fan panel. So we've looked at, you know, the product Ease Live by 60. We've looked at them the last couple of years and brought that to our marketing guys internally and said, you know, let's do it, let's try it. And said, but if we really want to do it, let's ask the fans. So hence we're with our fan panel. So I don't know, Ken.
I think the second screen, or let's say the second screen experience with the isolated shot selection is good, but I think in the end it's not the main thing. And by this I mean it will probably just talk to the main fans. So pure hardcore rugby fans will want to have this, because the pure rugby hardcore fan will want to see how the scrum went, was he offside, wasn't he, etc. I think most of the people that watch sports casually focus on the main screen, and I think you just have to understand when you launch such a product what's going to be your return on investment. Is that because in the end I really believe it's just going to speak to the niche hardcore fans. That's how I see it.
That depends of the sport we produce. Some sports are really very interesting, and the fans of some sports, motorsports, are very interesting with the second screen features. We can follow. The problem of motorsports is during the production you can follow only a small part of the race, but if you are interested on the results of your player, you need to go to the second screen. But there are other sports like football where the fans never access to the second screen to give more information or to have better replays or something like that. The fans of football, probably not worldwide, but practically worldwide, are following the main screen and speaking with the colleagues and enjoying the production. And usually there are only a minor part of the fans that are capable to access or they can access to the second screen, and the return of investment is absolutely impossible with these second screen applications in football in the major part of the world, in our experience.
Right. Well, I guess the good news is the machine learning, the AI, the cloud is all making it much more cost effective to experiment with these things, right? I mean, to take 10 camera feeds and just say, let's just put them on the cloud and get is much easier than it was 5 years ago. That's for sure. So we have one more question from Kevin Fitzgerald. Always going to ask a question. You can always count on Kevin to ask a question. And Ronan, of course, he's got to ask you. So his question is, how will the 8 Nations productions test new tech for future major events, given the wide geographic areas?
Kevin, I'm sorry I can't answer that because we're not delivering that event, unfortunately. But look, I'd imagine there may not be a whole lot more because, you know, first international rugby really back, bar what we've had in the Southern Hemisphere. You can imagine budgets are tight. They're worried about, well, nobody coming in selling tickets. I doubt if we see any new tech, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, I would concur with that, and you know, I'm very close to my peers in the industry, both at the RFU and F1, the All England Club, the World of Cricket, etc. And now isn't the time for innovation, primarily to generate that immersive environment. You know, those were conversations we were having 6 months ago, and we all hope that we had those conversations in 6 months' time. We're under a lot of pressure, a lot of cost pressure. You know, technology used to represent a cost center for many businesses. I think many of us now represent what is a P&L. So, you know, we're happy to invest, but we need to see a return on that investment. And, you know, that is kind of driving the behaviors. And that is just a situation where we're in, unfortunately.
I better just say something here, because it's pretty common knowledge, but not completely. But S&V will be producing Amazon's 8 Nations Autumn Nations Cup coverage. So I can't really sit here and say that we're not going to try and innovate, because absolutely that's our job, and our job hasn't changed. So the question is, how can we do that? So I'd like to think that when people switch on and watch the Autumn Nations Cup on Amazon, it'll there will be a few surprises, but that's all I'm going to say on that.
I think that's a fair comment, David, in a good challenge. I guess from my perspective, we have to maintain the quality of the product, but there are ways to innovate that actually isn't going to be adopting, lots of expensive technology that's going to break up existing workflow processes. So, for example, the in-game, in-life interviews, micing up players. These are all great ways that generate additional levels of content, and but actually they're quite effective and quite tactically easy to do.
Excellent. So wait, I do have to ask this wild card question, because obviously we want to talk about the next 6 to 12 months, and I don't know if anybody can really predict anything with respect to the next 6 to 12 months. But you all have these big events that stretch your teams, require a lot of people, require a lot of planning, months of planning, if not years, right? So, and we're in a situation now when the French Open, which we all thought would have been months ago, is now next week, right? The Masters, of all things, is in November. The U.S. Open is this weekend in Winged Foot. What's your sense on just sort of the next year's schedule and the year after, as far as it seems, just from my perspective, talking to all of you and other people in the US, as far as the production teams in their own bubbles have really figured things out, right? To work properly and safely, the NBA, NHL, all the European football leagues, you are able to work and get back to business. Are you confident that next year's events will, there's obviously, we know what things can go totally sideways, but given your discipline that you guys can pull off, say that the Ryder Cup's definitely going to happen, we got the Euros potentially next year, that these things, you all figured out this bubble concept to kind of do your productions? Who's feeling confident?
From our perspective, absolutely. We've delivered 8 UK swing events. We're out of Spain into Portugal, and next week we go to Ireland, Scotland, and back down to Wentworth for the BMW PGA Championships. And I know it's a similar pattern for our colleagues over in the States. So we absolutely have got our operations to a point where we can create the technology bubble and the health bubble, and we can get the production techniques delivered. It's a huge challenge. What is probably our greatest asset, i.e. we're kind of a world tour. We deliver tournaments in 31 countries. At times like this actually becomes our vulnerability, because now we have to align with every government out there and every health authority, and that is a challenge. But we have an incredible team, and I know we're not alone in that. F1, tennis, rugby. We're all doing what we can to bring the sports back. I think what we have to do is maintain an operation that is fully agile, and whereas maybe one shape kind of fit it all in the past, now it's about agility and being able to take your operation into an environment whereby actually the way of doing things may be slightly different to how it was before. So for me, it's all about agility. Operational agility will absolutely see us through this.
Maybe just adding on what Michael said, you just mentioned Roland Garros. It's around the corner. It's in 2 weeks' time. We're involved in the host broadcasting of the world feed, not the court production, but the world feed. And we're exactly in that same sort of situation where we have to create bubbles in order to be safe for the working people, but still be agile to try and deliver what the Tennis Federation has promised to deliver to the broadcasters. And we're very confident we will succeed. What we can't predict, I think, is if tournaments will continue taking place next year. This is, I think, is beyond everybody's knowledge.
I'd just say as well, from a governing body, we wouldn't have any fear in the likes of any of you guys being able to go anywhere around the world to produce an event. The big thing, as Julien said, is the government. And can we get, like we have a World Cup in New Zealand next year, can we get 12 teams in there? Will they allow us go on site? How much more is it going to cost to quarantine them potentially 2 weeks, getting in there and then 2 weeks afterwards? You're talking millions and millions, and can the event sustain that type of extra cost? So nobody knows, I'm afraid.
Yeah. What we see from Mediapro, where we have we're a very large group, we are more than 7,000 people working worldwide, that every country has different rhythm and different rules to work with the restrictions. It's not the same in Argentina or in Colombia than in Belgium, France, Spain, or Portugal. And every country has different restrictions for each production of sports. Programs in a studio has a lot of limitations to have public inside, or to work with the same team or the same artistic team with using the traditional production workflows. But what is clear at the moment is from the worst period of lockdown, we are increasing the production. We looked for solutions, and we have more options to keep working with all kind of productions in different methods, using different methods and so on. But we think that we are optimistic, and we will keep increasing the production capabilities, and probably, we don't know how many times, but we will come back to the new normal, more normal than today.
And I'd say from an engineering point of view, the industry is full of incredibly talented individuals who thrive on these sort of challenges to try and pivot. We're going over here, we're doing that, whatever that is. Those challenges are the things that we've been doing and reacting to for the last 6 months, and anything that throws up in the next 18 months, we'll be there to deal with. It's what we love.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear.
A lot of sports have a very different financial model as well, and I think that needs to be taken into account. If you look at our world, actually we make very little from spectators. Most of our income comes through commercial partners and the media through the broadcast rights. That's a very different model to, say, Rowan's model in the world of rugby or in the Premier League or in the world of tennis. So actually going behind closed doors is not a huge financial challenge for us. It has its other challenges, of course, but every sport is very different.
It is. Well, it sounds like you guys are prepared and ready to go for the next 6 months at least. So thank you very much to all of our fantastic speakers. I'm afraid we're completely out of time now. And thank you, lovely audience, for all your questions. They were great. I'd also like to thank our title sponsor, Panasonic, and our case study sponsor, VisRT, and to all the SVG Europe team that's helped pull this together today. We hope to see you again tomorrow, same time, same place, for the third of our 3 sessions, which will be featuring the top outside broadcasters in Europe. When you leave the session, you'll be asked to fill in the questionnaire. Please do, because we love to get feedback from you so we know how to improve our future events and even tomorrow's if you write quickly for me. So that's it from us. Thank you again, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.